even if we do all of the right things, it's likely that there's still going to be a conflict at some point in time. So when conflicts arise, what steps do you take to address these conflicts and resolve the issues? And are there any conflict resolution techniques that you think work especially well in this environment?
Oh my gosh, conflict will always arise. Just people living together.
Yeah.
You can live with the love of your life, right?
Yeah.
Like your husband, your partner, they still piss you off.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is so normal to have conflict. I think teaching conflict resolution skills to your staff is really, really important. And for me, it starts with addressing it straight away.
Is there times where you've had to move participants to other houses because you couldn't resolve the conflict and you've had to restructure the house or move participants out? And how do you manage that?
Yeah, it's really tough.
Every SIL provider knows the challenges: compliance, rosters, claims. But what if you could work smarter, grow faster, and make a bigger impact? Welcome to SILosophy, where we have real conversations about what it takes to succeed in supported independent living. This podcast is powered by Tania Gomez Consulting and Resolve. Let's get into it.
Yeah, look, I've been in the NDI space for about 10 years now, and I've done every role, from support coordinator to support worker to specialist cause to being the manager of a few SIL providers. So kind of done a lot in the SIL space in lots of different roles. So have kind of a different perspective when it comes to SIL. I see it through lots of different lenses, we'll say.
Yeah, wonderful. So the topic today is around when participants don't get along. So obviously the SIL model is usually a one support worker to 3 participant model. Generally, that's the plans that we're seeing coming through. And that means we need to have 3 people living together that may or may not always get along. And I mean, even in any household, there's times where you don't get along with your housemates or your husband or your partner or your children. And we all have to work through that. But specifically with participants, it can be quite stressful if they for a long period of time, can't get past that conflict or don't get along on fundamental issues. What are some of the most common reasons that participants don't get along? And have you seen any particular triggers or patterns around these?
I mean, why doesn't anyone get along, right? Like our SIL participants, they're just people. Yeah. That have different personalities and different communication styles, different preferences. Sometimes they're not always going to align. But I think there's a lot we can do with that to prevent that from happening. Some of the biggest things that I see is when participants haven't actually had a chance to meet each other first. Yeah, it's right. Like, you're moving into this house, too bad, whether you like it or you don't. They're not given a choice. So it starts kind of hostile when that's the situation. They haven't met the other people they're living with. You're asking, hey, go move in with someone else, which is a very intimate thing to do, sharing your life with someone. Yeah. And they're like, don't meet them. This is your move-in date. Whoever's there is there. I think the more we can do to actually meet the people we're going to be living with, or our participants are going to be living with, the better. Can we do things like go out for dinner first? Can they go do an activity together? Can we try to help them get along amicably before they move in? I think that's probably one of the biggest things, is actually just not having a good onboarding system to actually get participants to meet each other. Yeah. I mean, some of the biggest kind of roommate difficulties, because they're roommates, it's the common things, right? It's the stealing food because it's not labeled properly. It's having your music up too loud. It's not being respectful of bedtimes. It's all of the little things that, I've been in share houses for a long time, like 10 years, right? I've lived with a lot of different people. It's all of the little annoying things. It's not cleaning up after yourself. Like the exact same things exist in every kind of share house environment.
How, obviously, when people have a disability, you've also then got the added complications of things like medications and maybe complex behaviors. There might also, there's another layer, I feel, on top of the normal housemate stuff as well. Is it a matter of matching participants that have similar needs and disabilities and therapies in place, or is that just too simplistic? Is that too stereotypical to say, okay, we're going to have a house that has, 2 people that have Down syndrome or an intellectual disability, or is it not the case? Is it more about then one level either above or below that, as far as, well, now let's talk about their interests and their needs and their preferences? Is it matching people, by things like, are they super tidy people with super not tidy people? I feel like there's these extra layers, but I don't know if I'm just complicating it, or if I'm adding extra complications for no reason.
Look, I think yes or no. I think people with disability, their disability does need to come into play, but probably not for those reasons. Like, I don't think it's necessarily about matching people with the same disability type. Just because, 2 people can have autism and present completely differently, and actually sometimes really conflict because of the way that they communicate or their sensory preferences. I actually think it's more of a matching any kind of roommate together, which is, what are your likes? What are your dislikes? What is your communication preference? Do you like to be spoken to? Do you not like to be spoken to? What's your roster of care look like? I think this is a really big one. So my personal view is that you need to onboard participants really well, and the support matching actually comes from looking at what are your one-to-one needs. So often when we're having a 1-to-3 house, there will be times that we need a 1-to-1 support, but that has to work in with 3 other people in the house. How does that actually work practically? And are we looking at that before we come in? Are we making the house rules really clear? So the same rules apply to everyone, and everyone understands this is what the house rules are. Are we looking at, sensory preferences as well, sensitivities to noises or lights or things that will trigger the participant? And the way we find these out is, one, meeting with a participant and having a really in-depth onboarding, really finding out everything you can know about them, talking to their guardians, their parents, their carers, their support network, with consent, of course, and actually understanding what are their triggers. Their behaviour support plan may not identify that they are really, really pissed off when there is tomato sauce around the pan, right? Like something little and insignificant. But can we actually ask them what are your triggers in a house? When I was, having roommates live, I'd always ask, what's the little thing that gets to you? Like dirty cupboards always really got to me. Don't know why, just really petty about it. People have their little things, right? When you live with someone, can we match that way? And, coming back to that as well, I think meeting your other roommates, like in a normal roommate situation, you wouldn't just move into the house. You'd get to know them first, something on flatmates. You go and have a coffee together, see if you're compatible. Can we do the same thing with our participants? I think sometimes as SIL providers, we go, but we have a vacancy, we just need to fill it. But we kind of don't think that, okay, you've filled this vacancy, but for how long for? Correct. Because there's a lot of cost in onboarding and then exiting a participant, and the trauma that happens in between them when things don't work out. And that turns into a bigger problem. So I always think, put the effort in at the start to make it work.
Absolutely. I have quite a few of those really little things that annoy me, and we had au pairs for many years looking after our kids, and I have a list of them I would give the au pairs because I knew it wasn't normal, and that not everybody would have these, so they wouldn't know that they were upsetting me. So my biggest one is in our kitchen, if you leave the plates and cups in the sink and they fill with water, dirty water, it absolutely drives me absolutely mad. It's really the worst thing you can do in my house is put a cup with dirty water in the sink. absolutely drives me mad, and I spend half of the time and it will really set me off. And not many other things. I'm happy with lots of other things. And we have a mantelpiece when we walk in, and if you put something on that mantelpiece, it's war. It's on. I'm happy with you leaving your shoes in the front door. I'm happy with the kids leaving their school bags around. I'm not a neat freak, but there's a few things that are complete no's in my house. And, my husband makes fun of them, but he has his ones too, right? So we all have those little things. And I think it's being aware of those things, being able to communicate them, and support workers knowing about them, and participants knowing about them, and working through those things together.
And of course, if someone can't communicate them,
that's right.
That's going to make it
more challenging,
but they've probably lived with someone before. They've lived with their parents, lived with carers. Maybe it's another SIL provider.
Yeah.
Are we getting a good handover of those? Are we actually asking?
Yeah.
Because I think the hardest thing is that you get so wrapped up in, okay, I need to fill this room. I need to fill this room.
Yeah.
We're leaking money. We need it done.
Yeah.
We just get them in. Or, maybe the participant's in crisis and it's like, well, we just need to get them in.
Yeah.
And we don't do that due diligence.
Yeah.
Like, we actually don't do it. We don't ask the questions, and then we always pay for it later.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Even if we do all of the right things, it's likely that there's still going to be a conflict at some point in time. So when conflicts arise, what steps do you take to address these conflicts and resolve the issues? And are there any conflict resolution techniques that you think work especially well in this environment?
Oh my gosh, conflict will always arise. Just people living together.
Yeah.
You can live with the love of your life, right?
Yeah.
Like your husband, your partner, they still piss you off.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is so normal to have conflict. I think teaching conflict resolution skills to your staff is really, really important. And for me, it starts with addressing it straight away.
Yeah.
Addressing it directly and making sure staff know to address things directly. Sometimes we can make assumptions for our staff. Oh, it's common sense. There is no such thing as common sense. That my experience has taught me. No such thing as common sense.
Yeah.
Don't assume your staff know how to conflict resolute. Don't assume that they will even be able to identify it, right? You need to be proactive with your staff. Teach that at the onboarding. Identify if there's conflict, addressing it straight away. Can we get them to sit down at the dinner table and talk about it? Often it's actually not the thing that's spoken about that's actually the conflict. Yeah. Often it is, the support worker spending more time with the other participant.
Right.
It's, it's the things, it's the root cause analysis under that.
Yeah.
Can we teach that to our staff to go, okay, this is what's being spoken about. Yeah. But what's actually underneath this that they're trying to communicate that they may not be able to articulate. And I think making rules with your staff and being really, really clear about them, which is we do not take sides. I see it happen all the time with support workers where they'll bitch about the other participant in the other room, or they won't say anything. A participant might be venting about their roommate and the support worker doesn't say anything, or they agree. Yeah. No. We have to make those ground rules really clear in the start. We don't talk about our roommates like that.
Yeah.
We can't. You can vent, absolutely. But I do not agree with you. I'm giving you a space to be able to vent, to calm down. Maybe that's an emotional regulation strategy. But we cannot be seen to be taking sides with our participants, because that's when things go really bad. Is when we're taking sides, and then the support workers start taking sides, and then it gets really nasty. And I've seen it happen a lot. And often it's when management isn't aware of what's going in, or they don't think it's a big enough deal to act on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well. Are there any experiences or lessons you've learned from past situations that have shaped your approach to handling participants' conflicts in a SIL setting?
Honestly, what I was just saying comes from the experience of being a support worker in a SIL house. This was many years ago now, where the participants weren't getting along. Yeah. And reflecting back on what their situation was, the team leader of the house really liked one participant. They got along. They had a lot of common interests. She didn't get along with the other participant. Right. didn't give her the attention.
Yeah.
So the participants started having conflict.
Yeah.
Then the support workers get involved with it.
Yeah,
they
right.
start taking sides, and then it gets really ugly.
Yeah.
And it's hard to come back from. And then it's support workers bitching to this one and this one
Right.
because, you know, they want to be liked by the participants, particularly if there's elements of the participants having behaviours of concern that, you know, put you at risk as a staff member. Often you just say things to get through the shift. And you try to people please through it because you're like, I could get hit, or I could, you know, this participant could end up in hospital after a self-harm attempt, whatever it is. So sometimes you do things to get through the shift.
Yeah.
And I get that as a support worker, but often that's because there isn't enough supervision in the house.
Yeah.
And management aren't looking at what's happening. Like you can always tell when either your team leaders or your case managers or whatever the higher powers that be are in the structure and not reading shift notes.
Yeah,
Because
right.
it will be in shift notes.
Yeah.
Conflicts, I mean, hopefully you're training your staff well enough to write shift notes, but they'll be in there.
Yeah.
Or you're not talking what's happening in the house, because those things will be talked about straight away.
Right.
And it means they're not being addressed.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like it's just general communication and checking in and
100%.
Okay, wonderful. Is there times where you've had to move participants to other houses because you couldn't resolve the conflict and you've had to restructure the house or move participants out? And how do you manage that?
Yeah, it's really tough. It is. I've done it multiple times, and from the perspective of being the provider doing it, but also being the support coordinator doing it as well. Sometimes there are points where there's just no return.
Yeah.
Participants aren't getting along, and it puts the participants' safety at risk and their mental health at risk. And it's interesting seeing it from different sides. So when I was a support coordinator, I was like, we need to move these participants. You need to put them in another house. This needs to happen straight away. I didn't understand at the time that wasn't always feasible for the company.
Yeah.
It's not feasible. They don't either have another house to put them in, or financially they can't do it. And seeing it now from the other side has been quite interesting, because sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this is a person-centered scheme that is about choice and control. If a participant is unsafe or unhappy, or their well-being is put at risk, you need to talk to that participant about what they need. Yeah. And if that is not to live with another participant, hopefully you have a support network around you that you can reach out to another SIL provider and say, hey, this isn't working. We can't do this. And I hope everyone is heart-centered enough as a business owner to go, this vacancy, me keeping a participant in an unsafe environment because it helps my bottom line is not a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've covered quite a lot there today. We've talked about being proactive up front with the matching process, and we've talked about the common issues when participants don't get along. We've talked about a few conflict resolution approaches and some of your key lessons you've learnt in this space. Is there anything else you think we need to talk about today when it comes to managing when participants aren't getting along?
Honestly, I think I just can't stress enough is doing the due diligence at the start. It will save you in the long run. Sometimes there are points of no return that will happen, but during that process, there should be signs. Yeah. And if it's getting to the end where you're like, all of a sudden it's not working, something hasn't been caught. And look, that happens. We're busy. Like, running a SIL is a 24/7 job. Yeah. It never ends, and everything is always on fire. Yeah. So like it is tough work. Yeah. But I think if that does happen, instead of just moving on, reflect back on it. What didn't you do right? Yes. I think holding yourself accountable is really important, because a lot of the time, and I have seen, providers will blame the participants. It's because of their mental health, because of their disability, No. What did you not do? Yeah. Because there will be something. Yeah. And that's not to blame, but it's to go, how can I improve as a service and as a provider? How can I not let that happen again? Because it was likely very expensive. Yeah. So, back into that continuous improvement cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. You're speaking my language. Wonderful. I think that was really great. I think I learned quite a lot today about a topic that people ask me about really all the time. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Done. Are we done?
Yep.
That's a wrap on this episode of SILosophy. If this resonated with you, take a second to subscribe and share it with someone in the SIL space who really needs to hear this. Don't forget to connect with Tania Gomez Consulting on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook for more resources, conversations, and support to help you grow your impact. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep making a difference.